This
Oh,
conference will now be.
okay. Okay. Good. Okay. And Selena. Do I know you, Selena? Oh, Selena. I didn't know your last name. Good, Selena. Good. Welcome, welcome. Okay. So, I think we went through the book pretty clearly last time in terms of what we need to know. Interesting. Can I see the OU book? Someone said to me that the OU said that if you buy the Kirkland water, even though it has that calcium nitrate, calcium citrate maybe, then it's okay before Pesach. I'm not sure where they said that. But the CRC, I know we're finishing out our bottles of Costco, thank you. And we're just going to get some at Target, right, instead. Okay? But someone sent me, I don't see that in the book, but someone said that sent me from the OU. I'm not sure where it still is. Yeah. Well, either way. So keep that in mind. Okay. So what we have coming up is next week is 0 hour arrives. Okay. So as of the first Seder is which night? Wednesday
Wednesday.
night. The second Seder is Thursday. And if you would like to be joining me at the shul, would love to have you join us. Okay, just let the shul know. I know some of you have signed up already, so great. Looking forward to that. Um, Tuesday night, what happens? We search for chametz. Tell us about that, please, Mary.
You want to make sure to look through every nook and cranny, especially any place that you've cooked or eaten. So if you eat in your bedroom, you should also check there.
Okay.
And it's
So now we have
recommended.
to we have to fess up to our spouses about all the places that we actually eat in the house.
Yeah, bathroom. Let me and it's ideal to look. They say like a candlelight because it's a smaller flame, so you have to look more scrutinously.
Okay, good, right? And we start off with a blessing. The blessing is Al Bior Chametz. It's on page, I believe, 654. To see if I'm correct about that. I remember last time it was 654, so I tried to remember it. It's the countdown.
Yeah, that's what I try to tie it into.
Yeah, 650.
654. Good. Right? So we start off with a blessing. The blessing is that God commanded us al biur, on the removal of the chametz. That's actually the burning. Even though we're not going to be burning anything till the next morning, we're starting the process now. So the blessing is al biur chametz. And then one should not speak. As always, whenever we make a bracha on food or a bracha on a mitzvah, what must one always be careful not to do? Something else, not to interrupt between the bracha and that upon which we made the bracha. We made a bracha, for example, bracha to Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
Hits the spot. Don't, that vodka goes a long way. So we don't speak or interrupt in any way between the bracha and the hana, the benefit that we're getting when it's a birchat hanenin. If it's a bracha on a mitzvah, we don't interrupt between the bracha and the start of the mitzvah. Okay?
Rabbi,
Yes,
before
Simone.
we go into the brahas, okay, we are getting the kitchen ready for Passover right now, and we start shopping for stuff because we're not gonna have it's no time, you know. So where
No.
should we keep the stuff that we're shopping for?
Okay. So, if the kitchen is not yet ready for the stuff, so then what you would do is just take an area in a different room, in the living room, in the dining room, an area that is clean. Maybe take a plastic and put it onto your dining room table,
Mm-hmm.
and just put it down in there.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
things that need to be refrigerated or freezed or frozen. Sorry
No,
about that.
I solved that. I
Okay, but
with
for
the
anyone else,
refrigerator, I just switched the refrigerators because we're very blessed to have two. I already
okay,
switch. Everything is outside. Everything refrigerator is coming inside the house. Okay,
okay,
that's good.
okay. But for those who are not quite there, or right, let's see. We went shopping in Costco last week. We got some of the frozen cheese and the fish and things like that, and regular cheese also. So that was going to go into our fridge and freezer, which was not yet cleaned out for Pesach.
Mm-hmm.
So we simply put it into a bag and
Oh,
we
good
tied
idea.
that bag and put it into the fridge, put it into the freezer.
Good
Then, when it was
idea.
time to clean it, we cleaned it out, and now it's out of the bag and onto the shelves. Now, there is certain chametz that we're going to be selling, so that is going into an extra refrigerator that we have in the garage in a bag that says chametz, and on the document that I'm using to sell my chametz and the documents I encourage you to write to sell your chametz. So I'm writing there where the chametz is, and I'm writing there any cabinets that are tied off, that are closed in the kitchen, selling any chametz that is in there. And in the deep freezer, anything that's in a bag that says chametz on it, or in the fridge there, anything in the bag that says chametz on it, all that is being sold. Okay, good, Josh.
So, with us saving some stuff for like the fridge and not having the fridge to save it in the garage, can we put that in a bag for a week and put it to the
You
side if it's
can
just a few?
you can put it into your fridge, right? Just usually, such with a 3 day Yom Tov, fridge space is at a premium, right? So,
That's why it's very minimal.
yeah, yeah. So, look, we had some lemon juice, some lime juice, so there's just a little bit left. We got rid of that, right?
Yeah, I was thinking more like the bottle that we haven't opened yet.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
keep them.
Well, typically things you haven't opened yet, assuming it's not milk products, right? So it's usually refrigerated after opening,
Oh,
right? So sometimes you put it into the fridge, doesn't need to be in the fridge. It hasn't been opened. You could put it elsewhere. Okay, good. Thank you, Simone, for asking that. And any other questions, guys, please feel free to ask. So Tuesday night, we'll make the bracha. We'll start the search. If we were to interrupt between the bracha and the start of the search, we'd have to repeat the bracha. But once we started the search, we're good. Ideally, we should only really talk about things that are search related. But again, once we started the search, any interruption will not be a true interruption. Esther?
So I have a question about the search. So it's just me and my cat. So I don't need a witness,
No,
right?
no
I can
witnesses.
just,
No
I'm
witnesses,
good.
right? And okay, so we have a custom that we put out 10 pieces of bread. We mentioned this before. I recommend putting 10 little pieces of bread into 10 separate Ziplocs. And that way we're not causing more of a problem than we're solving, right? Now with you, Esther, right? I don't know, maybe have Yoshi or Gabriella come and put them out, as long as they keep a cheshbon of where they are, or you just put them out. And then but we're supposed to do an actual search. Yeah, careful with the cat, right? You have to do an actual search, and I mentioned this a little before, right? Actually, there's certain places that you might have overlooked. I mentioned coat pockets, things like that, right? Jacket pockets, skirt pockets, right? Maybe there's you have some sort of a pocketbook, a purse that you sometimes might have put a couple of chocolate kisses in there when no one else was looking, when the kids weren't watching Danielle, right? So things like that. So, any place like that where you might have put, right? So that's where you should do your search. We should start the search right when the night begins. That's when Shabbos ends, right? So that's Seta Kochavim, when the stars are out, and that is on the calendar. I'm sure I wrote on the Beth Jacob calendar. I'm sure I wrote the time to start that search. So traditionally, as Mary said, we use a candle, right? But don't burn the house down, okay? So be careful, right? So I tip, I mean, classic, the kit that I get from a certain yeshiva that I send them $18 every year, and they keep sending me this kit, right? So it is a candle. Any other items? A feather and a wooden spoon. Right, so we have some fun trying to get the bag with using the feather onto the spoon and then right, but so it could be a little bit jovial also. I was supposed to be enjoying our mitzvot, right? I'm not really sure, I guess the feather, if you had some, some crumbs in the corner, you could actually, the feather would be of some use. The wooden spoon, I'm still trying to figure that one out, but maybe it'll help burn it afterwards. I don't know.
What
Okay.
is the feather for? Like why a feather? I mean,
Perhaps that's a good way to get some crumbs out of the corner.
Like a brush.
Yeah. Okay, but by Tuesday night, well, assuming the house has been very diligently cleaned for Pesach, right? So again, it's a double check, and there are certain places, look, maybe by your computer you have a shelf underneath, and maybe a couple of sucking candies. I was actually cleaning out a thing of just catching up on all my something bills, whatever I need to pay. I shoved them all in there, and I found a throat lozenge in there. So these things happen. So even though the house is very, very clean, right, and hopefully chametz free, you still want to do this check. After which we make the proclamation. The proclamation is, say it in English, but kol chamir v'chamir de'id, right? Any chametz, any leaven that I have that I'm not aware of, that I might have missed along the way, so that should become batel, right? Ownerless, but I don't want to make ownerless those 10 pieces that I found. Now, don't leave like loaves of bread and boxes of cereal to burn the next morning, right? All that stuff, right? You might want to find a garbage place. If our garbage pick was only on Friday, right? So then in front of the stores, there's a place where you can dispose of it, and it's no longer yours. You want to do more of a burning of those 10 pieces and a few things that might be left, right? You don't want to come, right? You don't want to come with a truckload of rolls, okay? Okay, but we want to burn that which is ours, and therefore the declaration is only on things that you don't know about. That which you do know about, you put it aside. That will be burned the next day. I put it into a box. Right? Many of us have many of these Amazon boxes, right? So I put it into a box, and that way I take it. The next morning I take it out of the plastic bags. I have it in the box. I put the box in the fire. The box burns, my chametz burns, and I have fulfilled that mitzvah. That's the completion of this mitzvah that we started with the bracha the previous night. Okay? And after that, we make the second declaration where I am proclaiming as ownerless any chametz that I might have known about or not known about. Of course, anything which you sold is no longer your issue, right? I've already sold it to Jose that morning, and we are good to go. Okay? That morning is a busy morning. Okay? Not a firstborn. Gideon's the oldest?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A firstborn son, right, fasts on that day, but traditionally, instead of fasting, what we do is we participate in a siyum, in a completion of a tractate. That turns that into a celebration, and then one is allowed to break their fast. Most importantly, the prohibition to stop eating chametz begins before Pesach. It begins on Tuesday. Actually, Tuesday morning at a certain point, it's on our calendar. Why would that be? Why is it that we need to stop eating chametz well before Pesach begins Wednesday night, yet Wednesday morning at whatever it is, 10 something something, right? We have to stop. That's called the sof zman, the end of the time of eating the chametz. Why are we stopping to eat chametz early like that?
To make sure it's out of our system.
Once we've eaten it, we're good to go.
So you can start making your matzah for the Seder.
But we have our matzah from Costco already. Okay, so the reason is in the afternoon, that is the time when the Pesach sacrifice would be brought. And the pasuk says, Lo tizbach al chametz dam zivchi. Do not sacrifice on chametz the blood of my offering. So from the time that we could bring that offering, we already cannot be eating chametz. And we stop an hour before that. But our hours are not necessarily 60-minute hours. Who can explain that to me? What? The Jews don't have 60-minute hours? Was so strange. Everything is different with these Jews. Why don't they have 60-minute hours like everyone else in the world?
Because of the moon cycle?
Depending on the time of year, the halakhic hour could be longer. So the day is
Good.
split
So
into
what is the
12
halakhic
hours,
hour dependent upon?
dividing the day into 12.
Good. Sunrise to sunset, that's the day. Divide that into 12 equal portions. Each one of those is a halachic hour. Okay? So let's say in the winter where it gets light at 7 o'clock and gets dark by 5. So we basically have 10-hour day and a 14-hour night. 10-hour day, 10 hours is 600 minutes. 600 divided by 12 is 50. So every halachic hour during the day, during the winter is 50 minutes. Well, where is it relevant to have a halachic hour? Well, let's say Shema is supposed to be said within the first 3 hours of the day. Shmona Esrei Amidah is supposed to be said within the first 4 hours of the day. So that's not 3 hours in the winter. That's 150, 3 times 50, 150 minutes, which actually is 2.5 hours. Okay. Now, in the summer, it's very different, right? In the summer, sun rises at 6 o'clock and sun sets at 8 o'clock, let's say, right? So we have a 14-hour day. 14 times 60 is 840. 840 divided by 12 is 70. Okay? Now you know why Jews become accountants. Okay? So every halachic hour is 70 minutes. Right? So all of a sudden you have 3 hours in the morning to say Shema. It's not 3 hours, it's 210 minutes. 210 minutes is 3.5 hours. So we have our halachic hours. Okay? Now, when it comes to Pesach, an hour before midday is when we stop eating any chametz. It's a halachic hour before midday. And that's how I get to that strange time. There'll be 10:40 something, or I don't know exactly what it is, but it's on the calendar. So we stop eating chametz already by that point. We burn the chametz, we stop eating the chametz. There's the sof zman achila, the last time to eat the chametz. There's the last time to burn the chametz, okay? And then we get ourselves ready for the Yom Tov that night and the Seder that night. And as Mary pointed out last time, don't forget your Eruv Tavshilin. What again is the Eruv Tavshilin?
It's the foods that you're going to be preparing.
Good. It's the food that you start preparing before Yom Tov for Shabbos. And what is that? And once again, on page 654, there's a paragraph that you say, as you lift up 2 food items. Traditionally, an egg and a matzah, right? And by doing that, what eruv means mixing. Tavshilin means my cooked items. The eruv tavshilin means I'm mixing my preparations. Once I've started preparing already before Yom Tov, I can even prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos on the second day of Yom Tov. We can't prepare on Thursday for Shabbos, but on the second day of Yom Tov, on Friday, we can prepare for Shabbos. What are we going to do about candle lighting? Now, Wednesday night is easy. Strike our match, light our candles, we're good to go. What are we going to do for Thursday night candle lighting? What are we going to do for Friday night candle lighting?
Take from that existing.
Take from an existing flame. So you might want to light one of those yard site 24-hour candles, or you might even want to get, if you're going to OC
3 days.
Kosher, OC Kosher might even have some. They have these 48 or 72.
They had a
72.
5 day candle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you don't need for the full 5 days, right? But you use 3 days for the first days and 2 days for the last days, and you're good to go. Right? You don't even need a full 3 days because you only need to, right? You'll light it Wednesday night, and then you need to have it by Friday night to take your flame from there to light your Shabbat candles. What will be different about the timing for your candle lighting Thursday night for the second day of Yom Tov, as opposed to your candle lighting for Friday night, which is for Shabbos? Well, what will the difference be in the timing? Okay, so whereas, yes, Josh, good. So whereas for my Thursday night, I'm going to wait till the first day has ended. So I'm going to wait till the Tzeit HaShabbat times. Yoshi, can I ask you a favor? Will you give me the calendar that's on my stender? Thank you. So whereas on Thursday night, I want to wait until the stars are out Thursday night, that it's fully the next day. On Friday, on the contrary, on Friday, when must I light? Right before Shabbos even begins, right? Typically 18 minutes before Shabbos begins. Thank you very much, Yoshi. Now see if I did it correctly or not. Okay, so looking at our handy dandy Beth Jacob calendar, so we find that on the Tuesday, 7:52 p.m. is the search for chametz. That makes sense. April 1st, Saturday, Shabbat, Shabbos ends 7:50. On the 8th, Shabbos ends 7:55. So on Tuesday, the stars are out at 7:52. On the next day, we have 6:30 a.m. Shacharit, 10:47 a.m. finish eating chametz, 11:50 a.m. dispose of remaining chametz. Right? Typically burn it. If you can't burn it, you can give it the royal flush. Right? We need to get rid of it. Now let's look at Thursday. Candle lighting time is at 7:54. Why would I have written 7:54 for candle lighting on Thursday night? Because we want to light at what point? When the stars come out, when the first day has fully ended. Yet on Friday, candle lighting is at 6:58. Because on Shabbos, of course, in both cases, we have to light from an existing flame. And then what do we do with that match or whatever we use to light? Let it burn out. I recommend a piece of aluminum foil, right? And put it on that and let it reach its demise on its own without us doing any expediting of that. Okay, good. So that brings us, so that's Thursday, Friday, or Yom Tov, the Seder, right? Wednesday night Seder, Thursday Yom Tov, Thursday night Seder, Friday Yom Tov. We go right into Shabbat. But with that Erev Tavshilin, we will have been allowed to have prepared things on Friday for Shabbat. of course, we can only prepare things within that which we are allowed to do on Yom Tov. But we don't prepare from Yom Tov to another day, not to a weekday, not even to Shabbat. That's why the Erev Tavshilin allows us to do that. So Shabbat is the
Rabbi,
first. Yes.
a question about the Erev Tavshilin. Just to clarify, we're supposed to eat it on Shabbos, correct? Because
Yes.
it was
Ideally.
prepared for the meal, so ideally,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. If you forgot to eat it on Shabbos, that doesn't retroactively abrogate your Erev Tavshilin, and now you weren't have allowed, right? You're preparing for Shabbos, and you eat it on Shabbos, right? On Shabbos, we're going to have a very, very simple Sudah Shlishit. Okay, for those who come from Mincha, so we'll have Sudah Shlishit. Afterwards, basically, it'll be matzah, gefilte fish. Anybody who wants gefilte fish, it's there for the taking. And I think it's basically going to be just to fulfill the mitzvah of the third meal on Shabbos. But the kitchen, for all intents and purposes, is closed over Pesach. So during the Yom Tov, the kiddush that we have after davening is cake that's been made in advance from OC Kosher, cake and fruit. So we do not have meals here on Yom Tov days, nor on Shabbos, Chol HaMoed, Pesach day. It would just be a simple kiddush, and Shalashudas will just be matzah, maybe some jam someone will bring, right? But it's very, very simple fare. Speaking of which, why do we call it shalosh, right? It's often called shalashudis. Shalashudis means shalosh su'udot, 3 meals. Su'udah shlishit, the third meal, is a better description. Yet it's called Su'udah Shlishit, the third meal. That makes sense. On Yom Tov, how many meals do we need to have?
3.
On Yom Tov, 2. Only Shabbos do we need to have 3 meals. On Chol HaMoed, the intermediary days, how many meals do we need to have? None. Right? When I say a meal, I mean a bread meal. Right? On Yom Tov, or matzah meal in this case, right? On Shabbos, we have Shalosh Sudo, we have Shalashudis, and on the Yom Tov, we have 2. Why do we call Shalosh Sudot, right? 3 meals as opposed to the third meal? So there's a nice teaching about that. And I'm going to have to call number 2. I think Marcel, I have to mute you. We're getting some bounce back. Okay, so the reason why it's called 3 meals is as follows. We're supposed to be eating 3 meals in honor of Shabbat. Friday night, we're hungry. So it's not clear, am I eating it for Shabbos or eating it because I'm hungry? Shabbos morning, are you kidding? By the time we finish davening, 12 o'clock, we're hungry. Right? So I'm eating it for Shabbos or eating it because I'm hungry. It's not clear. Comes the third meal and we're not all that hungry anymore. Right? Or the third meal on Pesach in Beth Jacob, which is just straight matzah, right? So at that point, why are you eating that meal? Because it's a mitzvah. Oh, and that then reflects back on the first 2 meals. If I'm eating this meal because it's a mitzvah, because I'm not hungry, then I see even the first 2 meals when I was hungry, I was eating it not necessarily because I was hungry, but because there's a mitzvah to have a meal on Shabbos. That's why it is colloquially referred to as shalashudis, shalosh sudot, 3 meals, because that then reveals the integrity, the nature of the first 2 meals, and it counts as all of 3 meals. Okay, Chol HaMoed days, intermediate days. What happens during intermediate days? How do we treat those days?
I mean, like regular days, but you stay in the spirit of Pesach.
Okay, regular days stay in the spirit of the Yom Tov, right? If a person needs to go to work, a person goes to work. A person doesn't need to work, one would take off those days. right? In terms of writing, we try to minimize the writing that we do. Certainly any artistic calligraphy, professional writing, right? One doesn't do. Electricity, things like that, no problems at all. Of course, in terms of what we eat, right? Of course, well, it's full scale Pesach, right? That does not change at all. And then we have the last 2 days of Pesach. Historically, what happened on the last, right? According to the Torah, Pesach is a 7-day holiday. First day, Exodus from Egypt. Seventh day, crossing of the sea, right? Outside of Israel, we have double days. So we have 2 days in the beginning, 2 days at the end. Okay, so we have again Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday is Yom Tov. No Seder, just a regular Yom Tov day with the regular Shabbos or Shabbos-like restrictions, but Yom Tov instead of Shabbos, with the major difference being 2 major differences:
2 meals.
cooking or 2 meals, but in terms of what we're allowed to do, cook and carry. Right? It sounds like some sort of a gun law, right? Right? Cook and carry. Okay? So we're allowed to do cooking as long as we don't ignite or extinguish flames, and we're also allowed to carry even in the absence of an eruv. Okay, good. Let's go through a little bit of the Haggadah. I've given you enough time to eat your cake. Yes.
So during the cold moed, you're also not supposed to do laundry, cut your hair, things like that.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. During Chol Hamoed, we also don't do laundry. We don't cut our hair. Actually, we start with Sfirat HaOmer. Oh, when do we, right? Sfirat HaOmer, literally the counting of the Omer, or we're counting from the Omer. What is the Omer?
6 days before we receive the Torah.
Yes, but what is the actual Omer?
It was some type of wheat, barley wheat.
Barley offering that was brought on the first day of Chol HaMoed, the second day of Pesach in Israel. For us, that is the second day of Yom Tov. And we count from the bringing of the Omer. So starting at the second Seder, right, we're already going to, or Maariv, on Thursday night, we're going to start counting the Omer, right? And we're counting 7 weeks. We're counting all those days, and that's bringing us to Shavuot, right? So on Erev Shavuot, May 25th, there we count the 49th day. Who made this calendar? Just 1 second. Okay, yes, so Omer 1 is Friday. So we counted that. Thursday night, we counted that. Good. The guy did it right this year. So, May 25th, that's Thursday, Erev Yom Tov. That day is the 49th. We counted the 49th day on Wednesday night. And then we go into Shavuot, Thursday night, Friday, and Friday night, Saturday. Okay? So Shavuot is again, is a 2-day Yom Tov, but that's going to be the second day concurrent with Shabbat. Okay? So we are counting the days until Shavuot. Why are we counting these days? It's a mitzvah in our Torah. But how do we understand the idea of counting those days? Preparation, getting ourselves ready, and
to receive the Torah.
And linking Pesach to Shavuot. Very important. Pesach was the physical deliverance, right? And that came in two stages. The Exodus on the first night of Pesach, but we still had the Egyptians on our tails, and that ended. So we were then completely physically free with the death of the Egyptian army as they pursued us. What were they thinking? Into the split sea. And it wasn't splitting for them, right? And it no longer split once we were out. And that was the demise of the Egyptian army. At that point, we were completely free. But we must connect that physical deliverance to the spiritual exodus, the spiritual geula, which took place on Shavuot by Mount Sinai, Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. So we don't want to take away from Pesach to start counting on the first day of Pesach. So we start counting, though, on the second day of Pesach. And there are certain restrictions, which is what you reminded me of, Esther, when you mentioned on Chol Hamoed, there's no laundry, there's no haircuts, but also during Sphira, also there is no, there are different customs, we'll get into that more, but typically, right, until Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, Natalie's Hebrew birthday, which comes out this year. Where are we?
Evening of May 8th is Erev Lag BaOmer.
1 second. I'm in June. That's the problem. Good. That's correct. The evening of May 8th, on Monday, May 8th, going to Tuesday, that's Lag BaOmer. So that is when one would get a haircut, one would trim. There are two ways, right? So in terms of haircuts, one actually does want to get that before Pesach, because then we go a little while until Lag BaOmer. There are those, and I personally do this, there are different ways of keeping the Sphira, and some do the first 33 days, some do the last 33 days. So, right, and that's what I typically do. And if you do that, you've got that island of Lag BaOmer, even though you're keeping the last 33, Lag BaOmer itself also you can do a trim. So, right, so that way my beard remains looking very blonde and not white at all, right? So, so there are different ways of doing that, but that's a very important, correct. During Chol Hamoed, we don't, right? We can go to the store, we could buy things that we need for Yom Tov, but we don't buy other such things, and we don't do laundry. Little kids, right? Things got really, really soiled, right? And one needs, then one is able to do so. Okay, but ideally not. Okay, good. All right. So let's just briefly, we have just 10 minutes left. Let's briefly look at the Haggadah. Okay, we start off on page 19 with the order of the Seder. The order of the Seder is similar to the Los Angeles Angels. Well, it's not really a contradiction. Well, define for me, any Spanish speakers, what is translate for me, the Los Angeles Angels?
The angels.
The Angels. Because Los Angeles means Los Angeles, right? The angels. So the Los Angeles Angels is a pretty silly statement. It's the angels. Okay. So in a similar vein, the order of the Seder is a little bit silly. Because what does Seder mean? Order. So what are we saying? The angels, the order of the order. Okay. So why, though, is it called a Seder? Why is it so? That seems to be the essence of what we've got here. Why is that the essence? And we begin the Seder by reading through or singing through Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachatz. we sing through the 15 steps of the Seder. And when I'm doing the Seder, each time I sing that one, and we sing each of them catching up to that point as we're working our way through. So what's this idea of Seder, guys?
Ritual.
Ritual. But it's more than ritual. It's order.
It's one of the Torah mitzvahs of Pesach is telling a story.
Okay? That's one of them, right? That's Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Nachatz, Magid, which is narrate the story of the Exodus from Egypt. But that's one of the steps. Why is there this emphasis on Seder that we call it Leil HaSeder, the night of the Seder? Simone, you flashed green for a moment. I thought I was going to say Simone for 10 points.
No, I read here on the internet. Just like for the
Oh, okay.
like
You are flashing green to give me an
those
answer.
angels and
Okay.
the order. I was like, oh my gosh.
Okay.
Do you live
There
it the same way?
is what?
Do you live it the same way?
Okay. I think there might be other explanations. There's order to this world. We don't always see it. We don't always appreciate it. Even that harsh slavery. There's what's the expression? There's method to the madness. There's purpose in everything that we go through. And therefore, we call this night the Seder. There's an order. There's an order to it. There's an order to life. We often don't understand all of that. And that comes up in a number of ways. But as we begin, interestingly enough, right, the first thing is actually we start with the Kiddush, right? Kadesh is the first one we make the Kiddush. And then we're going to drink. We're going to drink 4 cups of wine. And what do you have to remember to do? Someone sent me a thing that was it Ben Shapiro's, right? Said Pesach is the one night that he leans left. Okay. Anyhow, moving right along. I'll be here all week, right? Oh, who's that? Oh, yes. I can't. I can't. I didn't know. Oh, allowed to unmute. All right. This might be against my better judgment. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Yes, caller 2. You're now allowed to unmute. Caller 2, you're now allowed to unmute yourself. Okay. All right. Okay, we had the Kiddush and then we lean left. What's with all this leaning at the Seder? Majestic, royalty. And then, orchatz, we wash our hands. Karpas, we dip. Yachatz, we split the matzah. The middle matzah, we split that in half. Right? The art scroll walks you through very nicely. And we put the larger piece aside for the afikomen. What's the afikomen? That delicious dessert. You thought it was going to be chocolate mousse. That might come before, but the real dessert is the matzah. Why does the bigger piece get put aside for later? Okay. What was that Beatles song on Sgt. Pepper's? It's getting better all the time. Right? Because that is for the geula, that is for the redemption. And what's coming is always better than what is now. The Jewish day begins with night, darkness, and goes to light, illumination. This world is compared to night, and then the world to come is compared to sunrise, illumination. The Zman Mashiach, the time of the Messiah, is compared to light, right? Illumination. So the biggest piece gets put aside for later. And then the children ask the ma nishtana. And even if there are no children, whoever's there, ask the ma nishtana. Even if you're having this Seder by yourself, you ask the Manishtana, why is this night different than all other nights? And we mentioned the four aspects, I shouldn't say the, four aspects. All of the nights, chametz and matzah. This night, only matzah. All of the nights, all vegetables. This night, maror. All of the nights, we don't dip even once. On this night, we dip twice. All of the nights, sitting or reclining. On this night, we recline. The actual underpinning of the Manishtana is that we are familiar with happy days on a Jewish calendar, and we are familiar with sad days. We're familiar with serious days. We're familiar with celebratory days. But this seems to be somewhat paradoxical. This seems to be somewhat schizophrenic, right? The first two things that we talk about, matzah is the bread of affliction, and maror is bitter herbs. So we're doing things that represent bitterness, slavery. And then we're dipping in a majestic fashion, and then we're leaning, reclining in a majestic fashion. So is this a night of sadness, of affliction, of slavery? Or is this a night of redemption? Is this a night of royalty, of regality? And what's the answer that we give? Look on page 26, 27. What is the answer that we give? Avadim hayinu hayinu lefaro b'mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. So what's the answer that we're giving?
We were slaves.
Both. This is the night of both. This is the night that began as slaves, that began with affliction, that began with matzah and maror, but then it turned into dipping and it turned into reclining. We became a nation of kings, a nation of queens, a nation of princes and princesses, all in that same night. And that is why we go through this experiential aspect of the Pesach Seder, that we're saying it, we're singing it, we're eating it, we're chomping on it, we're doing all of that. Now it's interesting, Rabbi Gamliel and anyone who might be taking care of little kids. So on page 42, 43, this is where one must be there, even if you're taking care of little kids. Danielle, you never taking care of little kids, are you? Once in a while. Amelia used to say, whoever has not explained the second paragraph from the bottom, whoever has not explained the following three things on Passover has not fulfilled his duty, namely Pesach, matzah, and maror, the Passover offering, unleavened bread, bitter herbs. Pesach. Why did our fathers eat the Passover offering during the period? Because Holy One, blessed He, passed over the house of our fathers in Egypt, as it is written. So Hashem passed over the houses in Egypt. Matzah. Why do we eat unleavened bread? I'm on page 45 now. Because the door of our fathers did not have time to become leavened, for the King of Kings, Holy One, blessed is He, revealed Himself and redeemed them, as it is written. They baked the dough which they brought out of Egypt into unleavened bread, for it had not fermented, because they were driven out of Egypt and cannot delay. Maror, number 3. Why did this bitter maror, the bitter herb? Because the Egyptians embittered the lives of our fathers in Egypt. What's strange about these three things, about the order of these three things? Pesach, God passing over. Matzah, unleavened bread on the way out. Maror, bitter lives. Put these in order. It should be the maror first, and then the matzah, right? And then Pesach, and then matzah. It should be maror, Pesach, matzah. Why is it in this order? It all has to do with seder, meaning we have to realize that the maror, the bitterness, was also part and parcel of the redemption. Right? Meaning, sometimes you want to get out of a situation, and it's better had I never been in the situation. But now that I'm in, let me at least get out. That's not what we're talking about over here. If that was the case, the order would have been maror, Pesach, bitter herbs, bitterness, slavery, Pesach, Passover, God passing over, matzah, we're already redeemed. We have to recognize that everything, actually, someone put it very, very well today. I did a funeral today for a wonderful person, Mrs. Rochelle Gelman, and I wrote about her in the newsletter that will go out tomorrow. But they said that hardships is the sandpaper that helps to polish a person. Yeah, I never heard it put that way before. That was very powerful, right? And we have to recognize that the maror was part of the deal, that we needed that to shape us into this nation that could stand on Mount Sinai. And therefore, had the order been bitter herbs, Passover, matzah, it would seem, all right, we left that behind. That was something that we just needed to get out of, get away from. But instead, maror is there as part of the redemption. That was part and parcel, a necessary component, down to the ounce that we had to deal with. That was a necessary component. Okay, I urge you to look over the Haggadah before Pesach. Okay, and we will resume after Passover. So the next 2 Tuesdays, we're not studying about it; we're doing it. Right? Okay, good. All right. Everybody, those who I hope I'll get to see you, those who will be joining us the second Seder, those who aren't, either way, have a wonderful, wonderful Sedarim. Look forward to seeing you over Yom Tov. And thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Right back there as well. Good night. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night.
All right. Thank you. Bye
Good
bye.
night. Goodbye. Go. Okay. Now I made you all dizzy. Good night, everybody.